¿Dónde me siento?
Thank you, Agustin. Please, over here. It's a pleasure being, all of you basically know Agustin. He doesn't need a long presentation, but just let me give you a little piece of that. I respect Agustin for a long time, being a Mexican and all. I'm very pleased basically to have the chance to interview him today. Agustin, as you know, is a former governor of the Bank of Mexico. He has experience in the financial system since basically the 1980s when he started, as he went out of university. He has been a great leader in banking during this time. Over the past, since 2017, he has been the general manager of the BIS, to the Bank of International Settlements. And certainly, Agustin, the financial system has changed a lot, mainly in the past few years. Since 2017, when you joined, the speed has always been stronger and stronger. And now, in the final year of your term, there is a wide range of new trends that are shaping your industry, and you're very active on that. Digitalization is one that is redefining the nature of money. AI has a strong potential, basically, to transform the productivity and the products and the way we see the world in every meaningful way. Meanwhile, at the same time, we have the entrance of basically non-banks financial players, which has basically reshaping the industry in many ways, and is pushing supervisors to reassess what the effective regulation should look like, and that's a very important part of what you're looking at. So thank you very much for joining us. I think it's very interesting to have this conversation. The name and the topic of our fireside chat today was the future of finance. Okay, I know it's an issue that you have been talking and discussing and thought for a long time, and it has been a key focus area from the BIS throughout you and the tenure of general manager. Why is the topic so important? How should the financial system should change? What's your view on that?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Hector and Ana, for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be here in Santander, being in Spain. I join those who have expressed regret for the natural disasters event in Spain these days. We are in a globalized world, and the best sign of it is that two Mexicans are talking in Spain in English. So that's the world we're living in. But we'll deal with that. So thank you very much for that question. Certainly the future of finance is something that is constantly in our minds. I think a few years ago we got some surprises because out of, they say in the US, using baseball metaphors, out of right field, we got all this, all this very interesting trend towards cybersecurity, cyber currencies, and so on. It was an important wake-up call. I think in the financial industry, both in the banking system and in the central banking environment, we have been working for many, many years in terms of technology, but I think that we imagined a pace that was not probably adjusted to the speed at which innovation is evolving in the world. From cyber coins, we had stable coins, then we have open finance, we had some disasters there, and that trend is going on, no? So we have been trying to catch up and have, I would say, a broader view towards innovation. And that's a little bit what we're trying to articulate at the BIS. The BIS, which is the Bank of Central Banks, have put together the BIS Innovation Hub. We have already 8 innovation centers. We collaborate very actively with central banks. And we work in at least 6 fields: subtech, regtech, cybersecurity, payments, currencies, green finance, payments infrastructure. And I think that we're making big progress. Now, I think that we are still quite behind. I think, and when you talk about the future of finance, I think that iPhones are really an example to follow, you know. In an iPhone, you have email, you have WhatsApp, you have SMS, you can watch, I watched the World Series yesterday from my cell phone. You can have audio. You can do bank transactions. So you can do basically everything here. Now, what happened with this device in the last 15 years? What has been the magic of this? Is that they have managed to integrate the different systems. In the past, we had a messaging system. We had the phone. If you wanted to watch TV, you had to go to a room and watch TV. If you wanted to do a banking transaction, you had to go to some other place. What is really magic of this is that everything is interconnected. Now, why can't we aspire to have a financial system where financial services are user-centric? Because today they are not user-centric. Today they are purpose-centric, they are institutional-centric. We are here to serve people, the financial industry, and I think we have to have a user-centric approach. Now, how can we have a system where individuals can do transactions with the provider they desire at the moment they desire with the flexibility that it would be appropriate? And I think that's what we have to aspire. And for that, we need to have a vision, and that vision is what we are trying to articulate in at least in the BIS through different exercises.
It's quite interesting. I mean, this is exactly, I mean, you're talking it right. I mean, we that serve 160 million clients, that's a particular thing that we need to be focused on. Instant payments, for example, that's something that we have discussed with you in the past, in the sense, I mean, how do we do it? I mean, why do we have to basically have different systems, different things, in order to be able to make people's lives a lot easier? So that's why there is a lot of disruption in the system, and that's why we don't need to work together. Let me delve a little bit more deeply in what we call Finternet. I mean, what does it involve? What do you concretely see?
Yeah, the Finternet is a word that both Nandan Nilekani and myself coined. Mm-hmm. Nandan, as you know, he's the chairman, or was the chairman of Unisys, a brilliant technological mind. So I got together with Nandan and said, Nandan, this is what we should do from a financial point of view. Tell me, how can we do it technologically? He said, well, we can do it in 3 months. Now, that was an exaggeration, but we have gotten the ball rolling. Now, what is precisely the Finternet? What is the Finternet is more than anything a vision for the future of the financial system. And it's precisely a system where everything is interconnected. You need 3 layers that each one are extremely difficult to put together, but nevertheless is doable. You have the technology level, and that I think we have the technology. Then you have the economic financial ledger so that it makes sense. And we also have the capacity to do that. And then we have the area of governance, regulation, and legislation. Talking in more simple terms, the idea would be, to some extent, to a leapfrog into the future financial system. I think you need to have a little bit of a change of the mentality. I think a problem that we have today is that pretty much all financial institutions, not only in banking, but in many other fields, we are sort of trapped to a large extent by legacy systems. Mm. Legacy systems were created with a very different mentality of how transactions should or could take place. From a technological point of view, something that can make a huge difference is tokenization. So it's not only tokenizing money, but tokenizing commercial bank deposits and tokenizing all types of assets. Tokenization would open up the scope for huge amounts of innovation, because in the tokens you can put how can they be used, how can they be traded. You can build into there the regulation. So a lot of the burdens you have today in handling regulation could be simplified dramatically. Mm-hmm. You could also build in cybersecurity or even AML CFT considerations, which is another aspect that generates huge costs to you.
It's a huge problem.
And so you can have a tokenized world where basically through unified ledgers and interconnectedness, you can put this financial system in place. The other advantage of having a tokenized-based world is that you can have atomic settlement, which means that you can do the settlement immediately, and therefore you could also save huge amounts in the management of collateral. We have already started a few projects in this direction. I think what we need to start with is to have a solid platform. What is a solid platform for a financial system? Is to have what we call a two-tier banking system. I mean, in every financial transactions, you always have a payment side. Mm-hmm. So you have to make sure that that payment side is in place. What are the keys for the payment side in every financial transaction? It's basically commercial bank money, and at the end of the day, central bank money, because any commercial bank money transaction settles in the central bank. So to do this, you need tokenized commercial bank money and tokenized central bank money, not necessarily at the retail level, but at the wholesale level. With that, you can assure that you will have what is called the singleness of money, which means that when you have commercial bank money, a payment originated in Santander will trade exactly one-to-one for a payment originated by BBI. A dollar in BBI or a euro in BBI is exactly the same as a dollar in Santander. That is a singularity of money, and we need to preserve that. So for that, we need to build a very solid pillar, digitalized pillar, focused on tokenized central bank money and tokenized commercial bank money. We started a project a few months ago with the IIF, where we are bringing together for the first time 7 central banks, probably the several leading central banks in the world, with 44 financial institutions in a project with the IIF. Santander is there, and we are very, very pleased to have Santander on board. Now, if we manage to build a very solid framework between central bank money at the wholesale level and tokenized commercial bank money, that could give us a huge platform for the tokenization of other assets. Agora by itself has a more immediate application, trying to simplify correspondent banking. But I think that the development that we're doing the advantages that we are with the system we are developing are extensive to all the financial systems. There are other low-hanging fruit in there. For example, tokenizing government securities. If you have a modern financial system, I would say the trilogy in terms of assets are money issued by the central bank, money issued by commercial banks, commercial bank money, and government securities. That provides, I mean, when you have a repo, when you need collateral, when you need a safe asset, traditionally that's the role of a government securities. So if we manage to build that trilogy, the progress of the future of the financial system will be very, very, very smooth, and I think we could sort of made up for the late start in this quest.
I think it would be tremendous because that would be a huge assurance to the financial systems in many ways and would basically would be a great enabler in the transactionality and also, I mean, to do things in a much faster and secure way. So, I mean, it would be tremendous. So in that sense, I mean, it sounds very promising in principle, right? But in reality, do you believe it can be delivered? I mean, we need to put a lot of people basically in the same track. How could you basically turn this into a reality?
Well, I think we have to start and we already started that with Agora. I mean, I think the public sector has to provide public goods in that respect.
Okay.
I think we have we have to think about what are the public goods that are necessary for this type of environment. One is, of course, to have digital central bank money, but we also need to facilitate the creating of digital commercial bank money. And that's why I think Agora is a very important first step. But then we have also to think about regulation and you know, all the infrastructure that is being created. At the same time, I believe that if we put the rules out there, I think that what we expect is that what we do in this machine is not governed by a centralized authority, is regulated by a huge community of innovators out there that following some rules, 2 apps, you can develop the system very fast. I mean, obviously the large companies play a very important role. They have a huge capacity. I mean, I don't know how many thousands of people you have working in innovation. Of course, the contribution of institutions like Santander could be huge. But I think if we set the rules adequately and we provide the adequate public goods from an authority point of view, this being a public-private partnership can develop very, very fast. So I think that what we should concentrate is precisely in building the bridges for this public-private partnership and start working towards a common vision.
I think that would be great. I mean, having a common vision into that would basically allows us to really make things at a different speed and serve the client in a different way. And this is, I mean, I'm actually quite disturbed by the speed of things are going in the sense and the disruption that we're having in some of our markets. So these are the type of things that we need to be doing it, because if not, somebody will cover the gaps. I mean, turning a little bit, I mean, at the same time also, cross-border payments, as you know, and we'll be discussing that a little bit, can be a controversial topic, okay? For example, I have noted a lot of media speculation recently that one of your projects that called the project mBridge, I believe you call it, could provide the basis for a BRICS initiative to circumvent sanctions, okay? So is that plausible? Can you comment a little bit on that, or?
Well, thank you that you asked me that question. In the Innovation Hub, basically what we try to do is to be a catalyst for innovation. So basically the way it works is that we talk with the community of central banks, identify needs, and then develop projects. And we do them in partnership with other central banks. mBridge has been a project we have been involved with for 4 years. Basically, we have several central bank partners and many, many observers. I think the project has been a big success. I would say that the project has been so successful that I think that we can declare it that we have graduated out of that project. The BIS is leaving that project, not because it was a failure or not because of political considerations, but mostly because we have been involved for 4 years, and it is at a level where the partners can carry it on by themselves. That has happened already with other projects. At the same time, I have to say that Enbridge is not mature enough to start operating, so many, many years need to happen. Now, with respect to the geopolitical aspects, the noise that has come there, Enbridge is not the brick bridge. And I have to say that categorically. Enbridge was not created to cater the needs of BRICS. It was put together to satisfy broad central bank necessities. We at the BIS, at the same time, and just this is, I think this is just to set the record straight. We always try to be a good citizen, global citizen, and the BIS do not operate with any countries, nor their products can be used by any countries that is subject to sanctions. And this will continue to be the case, and all the central bank members are in this channel that we need to be observant of sanctions, and whatever products we put together should not be a conduit to violate any of these sanctions.
Thank you. I believe that's very clear. We still have time, I believe, for one more question, Agustin, and I'm going to try to get into a terrain that you know quite well, which is basically regulation, okay? I always, and I remember since we were in Mexico discussing things that you believe that regulation should be ahead of the curve in many ways. The way we are living today, with fintechs basically closing the gaps, moving so fast, and basically disrupting, and is basically putting regulation behind the curve, right? What's your view on that? I mean, how should we basically see the world in terms of regulation versus what's happening in the market, okay? And basically putting the way it is today, in which the banks versus the fintechs were basically losing the battle in terms that they basically can go ahead, disrupt the market, and get away without following the regulation. So what's your view on that? Because I believe we need the same floor in order to be able to be competitive in both ways, and at the same time, observe law, AML, as you were discussing, one FCC, which is quite important. So in one way, we, the banks, are basically following that, becoming the policemen of the world, and on the other side, you have the fintechs and the other players basically, I mean, disrupting the place without that base of regulation. So in payments is probably one of the principal sides, and you see it every day.
Well, I'm glad you asked this question. I also know in the program that you will have Glassnode, so he's our guru in that respect, and I'm sure that he will be able to pitch in more. But I think, yes, definitely it's a constant concern of ours. I mean, at the end of the day, we need a very basic premise we need to hold is that we need to provide as much as possible a level playing field. And more than anything, innovation should not be justified by trying to go around regulation. And now, I will be very frank, and people are very, very creative, and they are very, very, you know, I mean, they're entrepreneurial, and oftentimes entrepreneurship means precisely to challenge the status quo. I mean, it's a little bit of what happened, for example, with cyber currencies.
Yes.
You know? So, of course, we need to regulate, for example, cyber currencies as much as we can, basically building on the regulation we have. But also, I think that that should be an invitation for us to innovate in the scheme of regulated institutions and practices. You know, like, for example, when you have open finance and you have digital currencies running very fast and running ahead and sort of disturbing financial markets and obviously opening vulnerabilities, that means that there are certain needs of society that we are not taking care of, you know. And therefore, we need to find how can we close that gap. But yes, I think that we need to move fast. We need to work creatively. A premise is level playing field, no? Not only in payments, there is a big challenge. There is also a huge challenge in non-bank financial intermediation, broadly speaking.
That takes us into another different world. Eh?
That's for class to deal with. But definitely, I have to point out that that's a key issue. And we at the BIS are trying to work on it as much as we can.
Well, Agustin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to have you here in Santander and together and having such a figure as you.
And next time, we'll have it in Spanish.